what's up, guys? Sound Garage crew here, giving our first shot at the talk show format, if you want to call it that. We're going to do a new format for videos occasionally. We have no idea what we're calling this thing yet, so we'll come up with something cool unless somebody else out there in YouTube land has a cool suggestion. We are open. So we're just going to give a quick run through today of our topic is albums that have influenced us as people, musicians, whatever you want to throw in there. So just kind of give you a little peek into our musical background, where we're coming from, and here we go. We'll start off with Mr. Joe. So what you got for us?
Oh, I got a whole plethora of show and tell items on multiple formats.
Sure you do.
Probably surprised. Well, thanks for picking me first. I guess I'll start where it all began. I've been listening to music. I think as far back as I can remember, being about maybe at least 4 years old, and it all started when this album came home. This is the exact version. There was a time when CDs came in long boxes, which were conveniently the same size as an LP, so they put them in the same racks. So the reason I went with this album, which is no surprise, the Beatles' Abbey Road, was my father came home with a used CD player, and it was the first time I actually saw an album, and it was that exact disc there, and I didn't know what it was, and the thing that actually got my attention first was the white Volkswagen on it, because as a little kid, and even to this day, I always liked Volkswagens. That got me into cars and a bunch of other stuff. That's a whole nother conversation, but I just remember looking at the album cover. I didn't know what it was. I mean, I was only 4 then, so a CD seemed a lot bigger than how it looks today. But I mean, the albums I chose are all on CD, because that was the format we all grew up with. I mean, I did get into records a little bit later on, and obviously tapes and all different forms, but to me the CD was the format that I really grew up with. I mean, I still believe it's the best format, and I still buy plenty of them. But yeah, Abbey Road is where it started. It's not essentially my favorite Beatles album. I mean, it's definitely up there in my top 15 to 20 albums overall, but that's the one that really got the ball rolling for me. The second album that stood out was Led Zeppelin 2, which isn't the most original title, but it makes up for it in the content. I bought that album, it must have been the autumn of 1998, when I was a freshman in high school. That's when I met Mike, and I was just getting into heavier rock music. I mean, I always listen to classic rock stuff. I always like Beatles music, but obviously that had Whole Lot of Love, Heartbreaker. I mean, that album, it just sang to me, because it had a whole backstory of that LP was put together pretty much when the band was on the road. I mean, they recorded that album in studios in New York, LA, England. So, I mean, it's almost like a live album, but captured on a record. And, keeping with that tradition of multiple formats, even though that's a 1994 remaster, I got a real gem here. Actually, I found in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
This is actually a RL hot mix, and these were actually recalled because the first round of them, the bass track is too loud. If you played the LP on a lower quality turntable, the tone arm would jump, and the president of Atlantic Records recalled all of them because his daughter's copy was defective. And that's pretty much the same mix that's on the 94 CD. And actually, Mike and I found that at Josie Records, I think about 3 years ago, and I couldn't believe it. They're pretty hard to find. And when I brought that home from that trip to Texas, my dad's like, why is this album any different than all the other ones? He's like, this is the first time I probably heard this on a record in 50 years. And I mean, even with the older stereo system I have, you could definitely hear the bass coming through, and we'll probably go through that in a later session. But the last album I have in mind, and they all came out around the same time, because ironically, Led Zeppelin 2 knocked off the Beatles' Abbey Road from #1 in the U.S. charts. But the last one I have is the album I got the most copies of, and this is the one that started it, is The Who, Live at Leeds. But obviously, the reason why this one's so special, it's the first one because it came from, anyone our age remembers it, The Wall, and it definitely has its lifetime warranty. But I got probably like 30 different copies of it, and I went with that one because that was the first one I heard, and that's the 1995 extended one. In '01, they actually released the whole album. But when I bought that CD, I'll never forget it. I bought it before I even had a driver's license. Went to the mall. That's what we used to do in those days. And it was in the bargain bin. It was $9.99. And I'm looking at it, and I'm going through it. I'm going through the track listings here, and I'm saying to myself, well, I don't see Pinball Wizard on here, and I don't really know a lot of these Who songs. And like, how is My Generation 15 minutes long? It didn't make any sense. So I got another prop.
Joe and his
Same.
Be here a while.
Usually the same exact Discman.
blast from the past.
I actually, put my headphones on. I was about to go to sleep, and I didn't really know what to expect. I knew some of the tracks, and long story short, that album definitely changed my life. There, I listened to the whole 75 minutes of it. I obviously didn't go to sleep, and it really got my interest back into playing guitar. I only had one guitar at the time, which was this one, but luckily that one was added 20. Actually, I had that guitar 20 years ago now, right, Mike?
Yeah,
Were we in
just
10th grade
about.
20 years ago now?
I think so. Thanks for making us feel old.
Thanks for
That's pretty scary. I've had that thing 20 years now. That was the last day of school that year. So, But anyway, yeah. So I'm listening to that Live at Leeds album, and I mean, I was totally blown away by it. I mean, it just, it was only a guitar, bass, drums, and a vocalist, and it sounds like a freight train going through. And it was a live album. I mean, that obviously got more into live albums. I mean, obviously, I got the original Decca LP, which you can see. I mean, that was the review I got from the New York Times when it was new. But, what else can I say? I got like 30 copies of it and counting. And with that being said, Mike even found me one from the Netherlands recently.
I have contributed to this problem.
But even worse, he got his son involved in this. We actually made him dig through a box of 8-tracks in a record store a couple years ago, and his hands were a lot smaller than ours, so he found us that. But I'm probably going over my time, but those are the 3 albums that get the most mileage in multiple formats around here. And growing up, my parents have yelled a lot of, "Can you turn that down? Don't you know how those albums go?" And I'll probably never get sick of them. But yeah, a little bit more. Obviously we do multiple formats, so we got Abbey Road on the original 8-track with the sleeve on it.
Ejector edition.
Another copy of Live at Leeds on 8-track, Zeppelin 2, and multiple versions of all these other stuff on discs and tapes. So I went over my time. Hopefully, if you have any questions, I can answer them.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I think I keep bringing this up, but what I love is that what drew you to the Abbey Roads album was the bug on the cover. I don't know. It kind of speaks to a lot, kind of to what we all are. We're both gearheads and we're both music lovers. But
it's funny you mentioned that. We got another prop. Hold on. It's Texas related too, I think. Oh, I hope I didn't break that. 15 years.
I'm sure you could get another one.
So this is the reason why I got into cars and Volkswagens. So it is a white one. That's what got my attention on that Abbey Road album, was that, and I didn't put 2 and 2 together. I didn't know the name of the band was the Beatles, and that's the Beatles. So, and believe it or not, that car wasn't parked there on purpose. That was just somebody's car that was taken across the street from at the time it was called EMI Studios, and obviously after the album it was renamed Abbey Road Studios. And that car and license plate were actually the plate was actually stolen like every other week for months and months and months. And I think that car actually sold at auction. I think it's in a Volkswagen museum in Germany or something. But yeah, that's
One of those.
you can't get a more iconic cover than that, pretty much. I mean, the funny part is that's actually the only, it's the only Beatles album, that original one, that the title isn't on there. But ironically, when they released it on tape in the 80s, I don't know who would know the name of the band or the album, but
Well, you might get confused.
Mm-hmm.
they even would have to tell you it's on compact disc, even though it's the size of record. So
Could be a VHS tape if you don't know any better. Come on.
I got laser discs, I got VHS DVDs, but no Betamax, no reel to reel. I don't have that.
Slacking.
But yeah, it's like I said, it's been really helpful listening to these albums over and over. And then, when we got more into collecting music stuff, finding that hot mix of Led Zeppelin 2, that was kind of like a needle in a haystack. And I went to visit Mike, and I actually found that. I think I found it the day we arrived in a little record shop, Josie Records, who maybe we can give them a plug. They've been really helpful. And I think I even found a Zeppelin tour book when I was there, which I have.
Yes, you did.
Around here somewhere. If I remember, they didn't even know what it was. This right here, hopefully everything doesn't fall over. This right here is actually an original 1969 Led Zeppelin tour book, which was probably purchased at the, while they were recording that album, was at the Dallas Pop Festival, I think Labor Day weekend, 1969. So, yeah, we were in Josie Records there. I knew right away what it was, and I remember years ago when we started getting into this music stuff, I think Mike even said, he's like, geez, I've never seen you so enthusiastic going into a record store. And, just when I go into those places, I'm in the zone. If I find something I'm looking for,
Watch out.
I have yeah, pretty much. It can get violent. But that's it for me. I don't want to take up anyone else's time, but yeah, I get pretty passionate about those three albums.
So
They're more than just albums to me, so especially when you have 30 copies of them. Buying more of them.
All right, do you want to go?
Yeah, sure. I'll jump on this one. So for me, my two kind of go hand in hand together. So it's Alice Cooper's greatest hits.
I got that.
It's not a single album, but it's of their greatest hits. But and also the Led Zeppelin 4, and the reason for those two kind of being influential is just because I remember growing up as a kid, driving down, going on road trips with my parents, and my mom always listened to Led Zeppelin and Alice Cooper, and those two albums were always playing. At a very early age, those were kind of forming my ideas in terms of what kind of music I would be interested in later on. So that's definitely the reason why I'm into that, the rock music and something that's got a nice groove to it and everything. And I think also it kind of contributed to the fact that, these days right now when I listen to music, I don't listen to music lyrically. I listen to the actual musical elements of it. So I think maybe that's because when I was a kid, I wasn't really paying attention to what the words were that were being said. I was just listening to it because I was a kid. That kind of took me on all the way now. And even now to this day, I don't really listen to what the words are, the poetry behind the music. I just kind of listen to what's the instrumental interest of the music. So those two albums really had a huge effect on my or had a huge influence on me. And then the third album that I'll throw out there is the Metallica Black Album. It is the first time as I was starting to actually start finding my own music that I was interested in, not just my parents' music. Granted, it wasn't truly my own music because I stole the CD from my sister, like any good.
Many we did.
Do. So I stole that CD as well as another CD, but Black Album, just like I think for so many people that grew up in the '90s, The Black Album really was their introduction to Metallica. Obviously, once you get into the discography of Metallica, I think you start learning about other albums that were great. And to this day, Ride the Lightning is probably one of my favorite albums of all time. But I can't deny the fact that Black was what got me into everything with Metallica and into the whole metal genre in general. So, those are my three. So I don't know, Mike, what do you got?
Solid choices, and I'm gonna probably be piggybacking off of some of that in a minute here. But we are gonna start here. Offspring Smash. Go back to the mid '90s. I have to thank Mr. Joe for this being an NOS unopened copy. This has never been opened since back in the day, so it's brand new. Obviously, I have other copies of that have been worn out, but it's cool to have a new one. That one, kind of like what you were just saying, that one's really the first album that I picked out as a kid that I wanted to listen to. This was my choice, my whole thing with getting into punk music at the time. Before I got real big into metal, I was much bigger into the punk stuff, Offspring, Pennywise, Bad Religion, all that kind of good stuff. But that album was monstrous that year. That was really the first time I got into a band for, really listening into the music, kind of like dissecting the music, being a kid playing air guitar in your room, that kind of thing. Going back and hunting out like their old albums. I've never did that at that point in my life, being 10, 12 years old, going back and trying to dig out the old albums from record stores and stuff like that. So that's kind of the root of all that sickness that I think we all have now. So that's been a really good one for the punk stuff. Then kind of diving into the metal, I got to go with Master of Puppets, which I believe this was stolen from my sister. And I do actually have a wall sticker on there. So boom, right back at you, Joe.
Lifetime warranty.
There you go. I have used it too. Like Eugene said, I mean, being a child of the 80s, growing up in the 90s, you can't deny Black Album. That was everywhere. It was huge. It was amazing. I think it's probably one of the most perfect albums ever made, really, as far as production value and everything goes. But like was mentioned before, that's the introduction for a lot of people to Metallica. But once you get into it, you kind of peel off into the older stuff, newer stuff, whatever. For me, Master of Puppets, Ride the Lightning, they are amazing. I think Master wins by a very, very small margin over Ride the Lightning in my book. So that was really my intro to the heavier stuff, and that's the album that made me decide to start playing guitar, and I need to learn this stuff and go down that path, which you can see the guitars behind Eugene there, and we've got some stuff hiding over there. So we've got the sickness, and this is the album that is responsible for that. So thank you, boys. And my third choice is kind of a continuation of that, but to give some backstory, probably early college years, Joe and I were messing around with a little band where I ended up playing drums and had almost all but given up on guitar playing, period, where I was really considering selling all my guitar stuff and just diving into drums head first and going that route, since that's what was going on at the time. Then a buddy of ours we were jamming with gave me this album, Trivium's Ascendancy, and further ruined my life with deciding that I can't sell any of my guitar stuff because I need to learn all this stuff now. It's awesome. And that has really peeled me off into a whole new direction of just diving into the really more technical guitar playing, just trying to get better with the lead stuff that I never really focused on. And that's the album that really kept me playing guitar, where I was fully committed to getting rid of all my guitar stuff at that point in my life. And that album just totally sucked me right back in. So
yeah, and I actually really like, Trivium was a big influence on both Mike and I, obviously, because so I had, after college, Mike and I, we used to play guitar all the time. But after college, I basically almost gave up on music, and for a long time, I only had my one Flying V from the time that I was at high school, and I didn't touch it. It never came out of the case for years. And then Mike contacts me and starts sharing with me this Trivium stuff, and that definitely pulled on me too. I'm like, man, I want to learn how to play this stuff, and it kind of drove me to get out of just the the 4-chord progressions and your typical chorus verse, kind of riffing. Because really, when you listen to Trivium, the musicality of everything it's non-standard, and it's just a blast to play on the guitar because it's technical, it's interesting, it's different. Nothing's ever played quite the same, and I think that's that really influenced both of us. I think in getting recently back into playing music.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
I think another thing I think is really funny though is that that I just realized was that you started off with punk, and then you went to metal. And I kind of started off with metal and then went into punk.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. It's kind of funny how that works out. And
we kind of traded bands in the middle there. So you introduced me to stuff I didn't know about, and vice versa. So
yeah, no, I love it.
And also I think with the Trivium stuff and you and I getting back into pushing each other with the guitar stuff, that's really opened the door for us diving into all the 7-string guitar stuff too. Because I've never even considered that before a couple years ago, and then Eugene kept putting the whispers in my ears, do it, go try this.
Sure. I mean, I still remember going into Sam Ash and we saw the 7. All were like, should we?
Yeah, if I remember correctly, you just took it off the wall, shoved it into my hands, and walked away. And that's pretty much how that all went down. I sat down with it and like, okay, I actually kind of like this, and the rest is history.
Now we have multiple 7 strings.
Yeah. So it's been good. But yeah, it's interesting how similar and different the paths can be, and how they all kind of converge in the same place here. So it's like Joe said, it's been 20 some odd years. We're all still messing around with this, jamming on the same songs.
We were too cheap, but we still find a way to spend more money on the same stuff. Not a good financial plan.
It's all good.
I just thought of something else too, but I think out of all the albums and artists we mentioned, I'm not sure about Alice Cooper, but haven't all of us seen either members of these bands or the entire bands in person?
Yeah.
I've never seen Led Zeppelin, but I've actually seen Alice Cooper, not in concert, but I remember when I was, again, little, I was like 5 or 6. I remember Alice Cooper went to the Hard Rock Cafe in Houston, and I remember my mom took me to go see him, and all I remember is seeing a crowd of people, but he was there in the crowd. I had no idea. that was my exposure to Alice Cooper.
So there we go. Yeah, we have
from Wayne's World came up. Maybe Mike Myers took your idea.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess we have 100% hit rate on that almost.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously I never saw Led Zeppelin, but I did actually see Robert Plant open up for Half the Who for the first time I saw just Pete and Roger back in 2002. So yeah, it just dawned on me that, and I think Mike and I talked about it before. I remember Matt and I discussed it too, but it dawned on us in like the last, actually it might have been the first time Mike and I saw Trivium. What year would that have been? 2017?
17, yeah.
I mean, we talk about it almost in a comical way because it was like the best and worst concert I think I've ever been to. The best, I mean, they gave 1,000%, but the venue was horrible. The crowd was horrible. But the funny part was where, and Mike and I talked about it before, and he probably knows where I'm going. We were like probably the oldest, like normal looking people because everybody else there was a lot younger than us. And I don't know, remember that guy that was in the front who, I think he thought Mike and I must have worked for a record label or something. Like, he kept talking up like these opening acts to Mike as if like he was trying to sell Mike on, oh, you came here to see these guys, right? Mike's like, no, I came here to see the Trivium, they're the headliner. Oh, what did the guy tell you? He wasn't really into Trivium or something. He was more into,
yeah, it was like the first band on the bill. He's like, yeah, these are who I'm here to see. Like, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, this guy was, I'm telling you, I really think, and then I remember Matt and I went to go see a band that Mike told us about, Hailstorm, and Matt and I have been friends since preschool. I mean, that's going like 32 years now. Feels like a lot longer. But, yeah, again, we're looking at the crowd, and I'm like, we're like the oldest people here. I mean, does anybody, I guess most people don't like really take music stuff seriously if they have like normal full-time jobs. But, I couldn't think of anything without music stuff. I mean, as long as I can remember, I mean, I've always liked Cars too, but I mean, it's most people end up talking to me about music stuff. I mean, car stuff doesn't really come up as often because those conversations, I mean, this might even go into if we want to keep the tape rolling, but you can have a lot more of an interesting conversation and get to know somebody better when you start talking about music because everybody likes music. You just got to find out what genre it is or something. Plus, it's a lot more interesting conversation with someone about different kinds of music you don't listen to than finding out, oh, my mom had a car just like yours. Oh, that's great.
Well, yeah,
That's
I think part of that too, though, is because like you just said, like everyone likes music, but not everyone's into cars, right? So
Right.
and I think the level of interest into cars differs, right? So like if you're a hardcore gearhead and you're talking to someone that's like just like interested in like just got their foot in the door with cars, it even at that point, like you can kind of relate, but it's difficult, right? But I think with music, it doesn't matter how far you're into it because everyone just
Right.
speaks to everyone.
It's accessible.
Yeah, exactly.
For
and
sure.
I think we talked about later editions of this if it works out well. Where I know we all have albums in our collections that I want to shock people with. They'll be like, I can't believe he listens to that because that happens all the time too. Because I mean, those are some of the best conversations. You talk to someone, you're like, I never thought this person was a fan of this artist or that, or then you just figure, oh, let me investigate this. Maybe it's something I like because.
Hmm.
Before we were on this call, or when we tried to do it the first time, I had some country music in the background playing. Mike's like, you listen to country music? Then I explained to him it wasn't like Blake Shelton or something old. But yeah, I would have never thought 15 years ago I'd be listening to country music before I listened to like old Johnny Cash music or Waylon Jennings or something like that. And yeah, I mean, I just watched that latest Ken Burns documentary about country music, and I actually knew quite a bit of it, but I mean, there was a lot of stuff I didn't know, and that's pretty much all early rock and roll music was, guitar picking and stuff like that. And the best thing with music is it's a springboard where you can go and find, different genres and different stuff. And Mike and I think we were having those conversations the other day where, Mike was mentioning how there's a lot of rap music he likes and all, and I always pick on Mike because Mike always says, everybody thinks I just listen to metal, but I don't. I listen to other stuff. And same thing with me. I remember a couple years back, my sister-in-law was shocked I knew who Missy Elliott was. I'm like, we're the same age. I know who that is. I mean, we grew up with the same kind of music, but it is pretty funny when a lot of people pigeon-toe you, think you only listen to 3 groups. I mean, this has come from the guy that's got
30
copies of this.
How many of the Who albums do you have?
Yeah.
How much of that wall back there is the Who?
You do it to yourself.
Oh, actually, that's all overflow. But right here, from there to there is all Beatles overflow.
Well, let's cut her off. Let's cut her off for this time.
Okay.
Before we get too sidetracked or dive into another topic that we want to
Very
hit
easy to
some
do.
other time. But
You
I
want to do? You want? I mean, we got
I think
time.
we've-
You want to do another one?
I think-
You want to stop this one and start another one?
Well,
let's
Michael closed it out.
yeah. Let me finish this one up. So,
Okay.
guys, thanks for checking this out. Sorry we got a little sidetracked at the end, but I think you can definitely expect that on these things. They are not going to stay on topic. The 3 of us go, and there's no telling where we're going to end up, how far from the original topic we start off. But yeah, I think we've already kind of teetered on a few cool ideas for other ones of these. So there will most likely be more coming. We've got more of the Sound Garage collaboration jams already in the works. We've got more covers coming. So stay tuned. Check out what we've got coming. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks.